Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 players that are skyrocketing up my 2023 fantasy football rankings. But before we can go in depth into each of these 5 players, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my 5 players that are skyrocketing up my 2023 fantasy football rankings. We begin at number 1 with Calvin Ridley, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. During this list, when we go 1 through 5, player number 1, Calvin Ridley, is going the earliest in fantasy football drafts, and player number 5 will be going latest in fantasy football drafts. So Calvin Ridley, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, now the wide receiver number 1 on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Current underdog ADP, wide receiver 17 off the board at pick 35.4. Now, the reason why Calvin Ridley is moving up my rankings is because initially I was a little bit nervous about Calvin Ridley. I initially thought that maybe he wasn't even gonna end up getting reinstated to play football this year, because it was really taking a while before Roger Goodell kind of lifted the ban that he put on Calvin Ridley. But now that worry is completely gone. Another worry that I had was that maybe Calvin Ridley would be a bit rusty. Maybe he wouldn't be the same Calvin Ridley that we saw in 2021, and really the Calvin Ridley we saw in 2020, who was one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. But now, as we've gotten later into the offseason and we're kind of getting closer to late August, early September, when you're doing your actual fantasy football drafts, I have 100% confidence right now in Calvin Ridley. His last season was played in 2021, but he only played in 5 games, so we're actually going to hop even further back in the time machine, get in the DeLorean, and go back to 2020 for a closer representation of what he could do in a full season. In 15 games in 2020 with Atlanta and Matty Ice Baby Matt Ryan is the starting quarterback, 143 targets, 9.5 per game, number 7 at wide receiver, 90 receptions, 6 per game, number 11, 1,374 receiving yards, 91.6 per game, number 4, almost 100 receiving yards per game, 9 total touchdowns, 9th at wide receiver. Some interesting efficiency stats. He had 2.48 yards per route run, 7th at his position, 0.51 fantasy points per route run, 9th, 1.9 target separation, 21st at wide receiver, and he had 9 drops, 3rd at wide receiver. Obviously, a wide receiver that drops the ball a bunch, not the most ideal, but you can kind of discount that if he's going to get a crazy amount of targets, which I think he could get in Jacksonville. Now, the Jaguars, they already have Evan Ingram, their tight end, who had a really good 2022 season, shockingly to me. They have Zay Jones, and they have Christian Kirk. So their wide receiver core is relatively good, right? It's not like Calvin Ridley is entering into a situation where he is going to instantly, clearly be the number 1 in many's eyes. But in my opinion, if Calvin Ridley is as good as he used to be, which I believe he is, then he is clearly better than the other options there. He's clearly better than Christian Kirk, and he's clearly better than Zay Jones. Trevor Lawrence took a humongous step up in 2022, which makes sense because he got rid of the stooge head coach that he formerly had in 2021, the guy that probably couldn't even tie his shoes. He had no idea what he was doing in the NFL. I understand in college he had success, but it is what it is, right? He had a bad coach in his rookie year. He moves up with a better coach in 2022 and plays amazingly. So I genuinely believe that in 2023, with Trevor Lawrence in this souped up offense with a team that is going to be able to score a bunch of points and Calvin Ridley as their wide receiver 1, I see no reason why this guy cannot be a top 5 wide receiver. Now, am I going to rank him inside the top 5? No. No, I am not. But does he have the upside to be up there with a guy like Cooper Kupp, with a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, a Tyreek Hill as a top 5 guy? 100%. I truly believe in the skill set of Calvin Ridley, and I believe even more so in this offense in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence under center. At number 2, we move to DeAndre Swift, running back of the Philadelphia Eagles, current underdog ADP running back number 22 at pick 70.4. Now, the whole world was in a shock, me especially, when the Detroit Lions selected Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. Not only did it seem a little too high to pick him where they picked him in the first round, it was shocking because they just brought in David Montgomery and they already had DeAndre Swift. And I am a huge DeAndre Swift fan. But then later on in the draft, they said bye-bye DeAndre and they sent him to the Philadelphia Eagles, where now his current ADP is running back 22 at pick 70.1. Last year, he was the RB 22 and half PPR and the running back 19 and half PPR points per game, tied with Steelers running back Najee Harris. Now, he only played in 14 games last season. It probably didn't feel like that if you had him in fantasy football because of how many times Jamal Williams vultured him, and it kind of seemed like they were giving him a just the tip sort of comeback scenario where they're just going to ease him in, right? They're not going to go full on in there. They're going to ease him in slightly. He only had 8 starts last season, 99 carries, 7.1 per game, which is very low for a running back that has the skill set of DeAndre Swift. And we are going to get into that even further in just a couple of minutes. So again, only 8 starts, 99 carries, 7.1 per game, 43rd at running back, 542 rushing yards, 38.7 per game, 37th, 70 targets, 5 per game, number 10. 48 receptions, 3.4 per game, number 12, 389 receiving yards, 27.8 per game, number 11, and 8 total touchdowns, number 16. Some interesting efficiency stats. You want to give the guy that has 4.9 true yards per carry the ball. 8th at running back, but he wasn't getting it. 6.3 yards per touch, 2nd. He had a 28.6% juke rate, which ranked top 10. Same with his 8.1% breakaway run rate. So, despite the fact that he didn't get too many games in, despite the fact that he was kind of cuckolded by Jamal Williams running into the end zone with maximum velocity, DeAndre Swift, on the efficiency stats, he still looked good, and he also passes the eye test. You go back and watch the games, sure, he didn't look like the same DeAndre Swift of the past, probably because he's playing through injury, but he still looked really good. Now he's on the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best offenses, if not the best offense, in the NFL, with a great rushing attack built in. Miles Sanders is now gone in Carolina, and the running back room for the Philadelphia Eagles, I love Rashad Penny. I'm a big Rashad Penny guy, but let's be honest with you, when you call a spade, when you stack these guys up together, DeAndre Swift takes a deuce on the chest of Rashad Penny. DeAndre Swift is significantly better. They also have Kenneth Gainwell, the pass catcher, but when you have DeAndre Swift, he's your pass catcher, right? People have called this guy, I've called this guy Alvin Kamara light in the past, right? Like Alvin Kamara Jr., the slightly worse version of Alvin Kamara. DeAndre Swift is a legit running back, amazing pass catcher. And at running back number 22, it's fucking laughable because we think of DeAndre Swift the same way, at least I do, as I did in Detroit prior to last season, right? He's a second round pick in fantasy, a first round pick in some fantasy drafts. And now he's at pick 70.1. That is value that you cannot beat. I love DeAndre Swift. I think where he's going right now is way too low. Let me know what you think, because I know some people panic about Penny and Gainwell. Doesn't really scare me. I still think Penny's a decent pick late in fantasy drafts, but I think DeAndre Swift is that guy. Moving to number 3, we got another guy in the NFC East. We got Darren Waller, tight end of the New York Football Giants, current underdog ADP, tight end 7 at pick 78. Real quick, if you guys are new to Underdog Fantasy and you click on the link in the video description down below, you will get a $100 first match deposit bonus. You deposit $100 on there, they'll give you an additional $100. If you say, you know what, I don't know too much about Underdog, I don't know if I want to put $100 in there, that's fine. Deposit $25, they'll give you an additional $25. They're running a contest right now, $5 to enter the Puppy Best Ball Draft. So you can do as many drafts as you want, up to 150, $5 to enter, big prize pool. I believe it is $75,000 to first place. The best part about Best Ball is it's just the draft. You draft 18 rounds, and that's it. There's no waivers. There's no trades. There's not even in-season management because your team will automatically have the highest scores inserted into your lineup. So my favorite part about fantasy football, the fantasy football draft, right? And then you don't have to worry about it. You show back up in January, and maybe you won a crazy amount of money. They also have a $25 contest. $25 to enter, $3 million to first place, $15 million in total prizes. So make sure you guys check that out. I'm going to be doing videos on there as well. So if you have any questions about it, they will be answered in those videos. So back on into things, Darren Waller, tight end of the Giants, tight end 28.5 PPR, tight end 10.5 PPR points per game. Now, the landing spot for Darren Waller, I think, is really good. Now, they have Jalen Hyatt, who they just drafted. They have Wan'Dale Robinson. They have these other pieces, Isaiah Hodgins. But in my opinion, I think Darren Waller might be the best pass catcher on this team. And I think Saquon Barkley might be number 2. As long as Saquon Barkley obviously negotiates his contract, because there are some worries about Saquon right now. But I don't think that's very important to this argument, because I think by the time we get to late August, early September, everything's going to be figured out with Saquon Barkley. So this guy's probably the best pass catcher on his team, and he's tight end 7 at pick 78. Now, I know the Giants' offense isn't orgasmic. I know Daniel Jones isn't the sexiest quarterback on earth. The guy looks like he does your taxes, okay? But at the end of the day, Darren Waller has some injury problems too, and that's going to make people worried. They're going to say, Nick, Darren Waller hasn't been able to stay healthy over the last 2 years. And I get that. But at pick 78, it's not like you're drafting him in the 3rd round, the 4th round, right? The first couple of rounds, I like to wrap a metaphorical condom over my team. Put a Trojan on that thing, right? Make sure that the team is healthy, right? Don't take some crazy injury risks early on. But when you're at pick 78, I'm fine swinging to the fences, swinging for the home run with Darren Waller, because I think if he's able to stay healthy, then Darren Waller has that upside to be a top 3 tight end, and he's getting drafted at tight end number 7. Now, last year, he had 9 games played, 6 starts in Viva Las Vegas with the Raiders, 43 targets, 4.8 per game, number 31, 28 receptions, 3.1 per game, 35, 388 receiving yards, 43.1, number 27, and 3 total touchdowns, 20th at tight end. Some interesting efficiency stats: 9 yards per target, 5th at tight end, 13.9 yards per reception, 2nd, and a 17.9% dominator rating, which I think will go up in New York, because I think he is probably the best target on this team, 15th at tight end. So again, even if you're worried about the injuries, even if you're worried about him staying healthy, I think a lot of that worry is really stripped down by the fact that he's going so late in drafts. Now, he's not free, right? He's not pick 140. He's pick 78. There's still some slight risk with it, but it's risk I'm comfortable taking with the upside that I believe Darren Waller possesses, which is, again, a top 3 tight end in fantasy, right? Kelsey's the guy. Kelsey's number 1. He's that dude. I get it. People argue he's getting too old. I don't care about that argument, right? But then at number 2, right? Would you be surprised at the end of the season, Kelsey 1, Waller 2? Sure, there's Kittle, there's Andrews, there's Hawkinson, there's Goddard, there's Pitts, there's these other guys, right? But in terms of skill set, Waller is really fucking good, and he's going to be on the field a ton for the Giants, and Daniel Jones wants someone that he can rely on. And I think he's going to be able to rely on Darren Waller a bunch this season. At number 4, we got Jahan Dotson, wide receiver of the Commanders, underdog ADP wide receiver 42 at pick 84. Now, earlier on in the offseason, I'm going to be honest with you, every time I saw Jahan Dotson in an underdog draft, I would just skip on him. I would think, you know what? Commanders, not the best, right? Their quarterback situation is Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett. I think Sam Howell starts the season, but, if things don't go too well, Sam Howell doesn't have too much tape. He had one good game at the end of the season against the Dallas Cowboys. So, not saying he's garbage. I'm just saying we don't have a lot of tape on him. So, if he ends up sucking, it wouldn't shock me if we saw Jacoby Brissett play. But he goes from Heineke and Wentz was really bad. I know Sam Howell played that one game, but really Heineke and Wentz all season to Howell and Brissett. And even if you think Howell's not that great or Brissett's not that great, let's be honest, can't be much worse than last season. And the reason why I was kind of passing up on Dotson, again, because he's on the Commanders, right? The quarterback situation isn't the best. But when I started looking deeper into things, I did a scuba dive like research, like that mission in Modern Warfare 2, and I figured out that, hey, while he is wide receiver 42 at pick 84, and that might be a little sweet for some people, right? Because they have Terry McLaurin, this guy can play. And he could play really well if you look into some of his per game stats, right? If you go, you don't just look at the stat sheet, right? Because the stat sheet says 12 games played in 2022 with 10 starts, 61 targets, 5.1 per game, 70th at wide receiver, 35 receptions, 2.9 per game, 77th, 523 receiving yards, 43.6 per game, 63rd, and 7 total touchdowns, 14th at wide receiver. So obviously the stats aren't amazing. Wide receiver 50.5 PPR, wide receiver 38.5 PPR points per game. But when you dive a little bit deeper, you realize that the quarterback situation, while bad, this guy was still able to flourish. 6.6 target accuracy, 91st at wide receiver. That's bad. 14.9 yards per reception, 16th. 2.14 fantasy points per target, 6th, and a 50% contested catch rate, 19th at wide receiver. Now, I don't think this is the next Randy Moss. I don't think this is the next Tyreek Hill. I don't think this is the next Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, whatever name you want to throw out as like a great wide receiver. But I do think that he has the skill. Dotson had spike games last year. Spike week games. For instance, he had 2 of his games, he only played in 12 games with 10 starts, were top 12. And 6 of them were top 25. So, coming off the board of wide receiver 42, and he had 6 out of 10 starts as a top 25 guy. So, it doesn't take, we're talking about skyrocketing. It doesn't take some fucking NASA scientist to figure out, that builds these rocket ships to figure out that, hey, Jahan Dotson's actually pretty good. And while they have Terry McLaurin, they have Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson's the clear number 2 guy, in my opinion, in this offense. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm kind of sick of Riverboat Ron, right? I kind of am at this point. But I got to be honest, I think Jahan Dotson is pretty good. And I think based upon the efficiency stats that I've read, and if you just go back and look at his stats like on some of these good games, the guy really is pretty good. He's pretty fast as well. I think Sam Howell and him are going to be able to build a great connection, both in the same draft class. And again, even if things go sour, Jacoby Brissett was pretty good last year in Cleveland. So I think Jahan Dotson's going to be pretty solid. And at number 5, we got a rookie. We got Anthony Richardson, quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, underdog ADP quarterback 10, pick 85.1. Now, do I agree that he should be going as a top 10 quarterback? No. But do I get it? Yes. And do I think that he'll probably end up in my top 12 rankings come August? Probably. Right now, I think he's like number 13 or 14, so he's already knocking on the door. He's just about there. The landing spot, in my opinion, in Indy is great for Richardson. Now, you might be thinking, Nick, last year, the Colts offense was awful. Nick, Matt Ryan struggled. Nick, they had to bring in Sam Ehlinger. Yes, right? They struggled. There was injuries. Jonathan Taylor was kind of in and out. But Matt Ryan wasn't good. Now, I thought Matt Ryan would be fine. It was clear the old age sunk his ship, Titanic style. But I think Shane Steichen, who had Jalen Hurts playing pretty well in Philly, right? Played really good last year. I think Anthony Richardson could excel in this environment. I think when you bring in Shane Steichen, it makes perfect sense to fucking draft the quarterback that can run. It makes perfect sense. Gardner Minshew is also on the team. So that's a potential road bump for some people, right? You draft Richardson as quarterback 10. What the fuck happens if Richardson isn't starting the first couple of games, right? I don't think anyone believes that Gardner Minshew is going to play all year, but I think you can talk yourself into maybe Minshew plays 2-3 games. And as a top 10 quarterback in ADP, you don't want to pay that price. Now, I think there's also a difference between underdog and redraft leagues. I think in most redraft leagues, people aren't going to go bananas for Anthony Richardson, right? Because what if he isn't the starter early on in the season, right? It's not as important, I think, in underdog, but I feel like that is more important in redraft because you don't necessarily want to pigeonhole yourself because once you draft Richardson, if that's the scenario, you have to draft 2 quarterbacks, and I don't like doing that. But I also understand the upside, and that's why he's moving up my rankings. While I don't think this guy is that great of a passer, I don't think he is. I think at the end of the day, though, that's not really what matters. I don't need this bastard to throw 350 yards and 3 touchdowns every game. I don't need 300 yards. I need 180 yards, a rushing touchdown, and 100 rushing yards. And bada bing, bada boom, this guy might be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football. 12 games played in 2022 at Florida, 327 passing yards, 2,549 passing yards. He has 327 passing attempts, 2,549 passing yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, which isn't that high, 17 passing touchdowns with 9 interceptions, 654 rushing yards. He ranks number 1 out of all quarterbacks charted ever by Player Profiler in athleticism. Freak athlete. again, I don't think this guy is that great of a passer. He has good weapons, though. They draft a wide receiver. They got Alec Pierce. They got Jelani Woods. They got Michael Pittman. They got Jonathan Taylor. The check down. Just check it down, check it down, check it down. Okay? So again, Anthony Richardson doesn't have to be fucking Patrick Mahomes. Doesn't have to be Peyton Manning, Tom Brady to be a great fantasy quarterback. So that's what I'll leave you with. I know right now you might be a little bit nervous to draft Richardson. Even I would be a quarterback 10. I've done it before, but it's a little bit gross, right? His ADP is going to get higher, though, on Underdog, I think. There's a lot of positive sparks out of the camp of the Colts already on Richardson. It's going to get exciting, you know? We're about halfway through May. It's the 15th. Things are going to start ramping up. Preseason's going to start. Richardson's going to run in like a 20-yard touchdown, and his ADP is going to go out the fucking wazoo. So, 5 players skyrocketing up my rankings to recap: Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Swift, Darren Waller, Jahan Dotson, and Anthony Richardson. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always,